this edureading article 11, and it discusses the difference between active learning and passive learning and students' engagement with these concepts and how they feel following these two different forms of delivery. So it's a 21-minute read, very short, very sharp, very quick. It's roughly 5 pages. There's a couple of graphs and a couple of complicated phrases, but otherwise it's a super quick and easy read. So before you jump in, you'll need to know that TOL stands for test of learning, which is basically how much they've learnt after the finish of the lecture, and also FOL, which is feeling of learning, so their perception of it, which closely but not exactly relates to our cognitive load theory, where the students are asked to sort of explain how they felt about things. In cognitive load theory, it's more about the strain and the difficulty that they had, whereas this is more based on their perception. So the context of this study is sort of STEM lectures at a university, so that may not necessarily relate to all of us as much as we might like, but I think the concepts really apply across different things, and they will help us to clarify what we think about student feedback and the understanding of teachers and how they all sort of intermesh and what we value and what we put weight in. Okay, so prompt 1 is really easy. It's simply, the start of the article talks about students having to have their minds changed about certain things from the beginning of a semester or the start of a term or the start of a year. Whether you practice active learning or not, what's something that you actively have to train your students in, and things you have to explain to your students about your approach, your pedagogy, and how you view teaching and learning, and therefore the way that they have to act and behave around your teaching style. The second prompt is the concept of fluency. So there's a lot of discussion about fluency, what makes a disfluent and a fluent lecture, what makes them hang together, and the students provide 3 actual core definitions of what they're basing their responses on. So they are clarity of explanations, organization of presentation, and finally smooth flow of instructions. And implicit within this prompt is what's known as the Dr. Foxx Effect, which is basically a very competent actor who said nothing of consequence and the actual content that he presented lacked clarity. I'll link the video somewhere nearby. So inherent in this question is that something to be strived for, clarity, and is that sufficient for us as teachers? So the actual prompt is, how fluent are your lessons, and do you think this is actually a good thing to strive for? Is this a good assessment of our teaching? And the third and final prompt is, as discussed earlier, there's test of learning and there's feeling of learning. So this is sort of like a student assessment of learning and a teacher assessment of learning. In your class, how do you balance these 2 criteria, and which do you emphasize and which do you disemphasize, and why? Alright, prompt 4, let's make it easy. I did say third was the final, but obviously I've avoided the obvious topic, which is active learning. So number 4 is just, how active are your classes, and would you like them to be more active, and what sort of responses have you found to taking active learning as an approach? Hopefully this article is short and manageable enough that we can all jump on and share our thoughts. I look forward to hearing what we all have to discuss, and thank you for your continued participation in this group.